Hello, this is Brad from Maker Nexus. Today we're going to do a quick tutorial on how to create something like this sign right here. We're going to use VCarve Pro and we're going to make something along these lines. We're going to create the geometry and the tool paths and save the file. And later on we'll have to go to Maker Nexus and actually write out the tool paths because your demo version will only allow you to do geometry and tool paths, but you can't save the ShopBot specific code. All right, going to close that. We're going to start with a clean sheet. So this is the splash screen when you download VCarve Pro or VCarve Desktop. This happens to be VCarve Pro. So if you take a look up the top, my version says Makerspace Client version 10.0. Normally, when you go to the help file and say about VCarve Pro, there's a space here that says, please enter your license code. Instead of license code, if you enter the makerspace code for Maker Nexus, which you can get from our Slack or from coming into the shop and copying it down, emailing it to yourself, however you want, your copy of VCarve Pro trial version turns into a makerspace version, which will work for basically forever. However, you will not be able to write tool paths. You'll only be able to create the tool paths, but not write out the code that makes the ShopBot go. Um, the desktop version of VCarve Pro is about $300 or $400, and the Pro version is $800, and the Makerspace version is free. So depending on your price point and your pain level, you can pick which one of those three you prefer. I prefer the Makerspace version. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of drawing. First thing we're going to do is we need to create a new file. So I'm going to click on Create New File, and it's going to ask me how big is your workspace going to be. This is normally how large the piece of wood or acrylic or polycarbonate or whatever you're working with is. For today, let's say my piece of lumber is 12 inches wide and 9 inches tall and 3/4 of an inch thick. I can work in either inches or millimeters. It works either way. I prefer inches because that's what I learned and that's what I think in. Millimeters works just fine. We noticed we skipped over the top part where it says whether the job type is either single-sided, double-sided, or rotary. I'm only going to talk about single-sided. Two-sided is at least twice as complicated, if not more so. So we're going to do single-sided. Next thing we needed to do is we need to decide where the 0Z is going to be. We have two logical choices. The first one is the top of the material, and the second one is the bottom of the material or the surface of the table itself. I strongly recommend that you use the machine bed, the bottom of your material. Our system is set up to make that easy. We have a special Z zeroing plate that is calibrated for the surface of the bed, and this will make life easy. So use the machine bed, use material surface if you're a pro and know what you're doing and plan on zeroing some other way. Next, we have the X and Y zero. I recommend that you use the lower left. That's this corner down here, the lower left of your screen. And it's also the corner that's closest to you, the most accessible corner when you are using our ShopBot. There are other possibilities, but the lower left-hand corner makes sense. There's this Use Offset tab, the checkbox here, use at your peril. This is for if you have a fixture or a jig of some variety, or if you're unlucky enough to use something like Adobe Illustrator to create your vectors and import them. Sometimes you get a offset for free, which will do nothing but make your life miserable. So make sure after you import vectors that you check the offset and make sure it is unchecked. And if it is checked, uncheck it and move your graphics back into your working area. Lastly, in the bottom, we have modeling resolution and appearance. This merely says how much processing time am I going to spend making the 3D thing look pretty, and is it going to look like wood or plastic or aluminum or what have you. We'll leave it at the default. Great. So there's my workspace. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a big rectangle. I'm going to use the rectangle tool. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to make my rectangle cover the entire area. So I click one corner and I drag down and it snaps to the other. So now I have a rectangle that's 12 inches wide, 9 inches tall, anchored at the corner. Click close, and you can barely see that it's highlighted. So when I click on it, if I click on it, it highlights, it turns into dotted line. You notice I got rounded corners. I didn't ask for rounded corners, but that was preset from before. So I'm going to click apply and change that. So now I have my corners. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to make my actual sign a little bit smaller. So I'm going to use the offset. I'm going to click on the offset. And I say I want you to go inwards. Let's go 1/2 inch for the outline. Great. And then I'm going to go in 2 inches for a little uh, divot that I want to put my text in. Close. We're done. Great. I like rounded corners, so I'm going to use the fillet tool or fillet tool. Click on the fillet tool. I want my fillets to be 1/4 of an inch radius. I'm going to just use normal. So I move it to the corner and I see a checkbox and it allows me to make those corners round. That makes me very happy. Okay, there's all my corners. Okay. Next thing I want to do is I want to put some text in the center that says Maker Nexus. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to use the text tool. And I get to pick whatever font I want. I like Times New Roman. There's all the fonts that are loaded on your computer. Let's make it 1.5 inches tall. And since it has trouble spacing, I'm going to do 2 different texts. There's Maker. Great. And do it again. And we'll call it, let's unselect that. Do it again, do it Nexus. Great. Okay, notice that they're all over the place. I don't like that. I'm going to center that. So you notice it's pink, it's already highlighted. That means it's selected. I'm going to go to my centering tool and I'm going to use the one up here that says I want you to center it in the middle of the material. Looking good. Close that for now. I'm going to click the other part and look, they're backwards. I'll fix that in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the tool and I'm going to align them in the center. That's great. I want to move this one up. I can use my arrow keys to smoothly scroll. Click the other part. Use the arrow keys, move it down. Looks good. I like it. I could select both of these and do the same thing and center it in the center like that. Or I could have done the select both axes. Okay, so there's my text. Last but not least, I want to put a hole in each corner so I can hang this up like a sign. So for that, I'm going to use the circle tool. And for the circle tool, I'm going to say I want my hole to be a radius of diameter 0.25. That's a good 1/4 inch hole. I'm going to put the first one at X1, Y1. Click Create. I'm going to do Y at, I believe it's 8 for the next corner. There we are. You can go X11. Got one out there. And then back for Y1. Great. There's my 4 holes. Okay, so I've got the basic outline for my sign. Let's go over to the toolpath. So here is the switch to toolpath. I can either switch over there and I'll have just that. I can switch back to my drawing. Or if I want to have them both up at the same time, I can go over and click the flyout and click the pin. And now I've got both drawing tools and toolpathing tools. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clear out this area right here in the center. I'm going to make a pocket out of that. So I'm going to click the pocket tool. And I'm going to click the geometry I want it to do. Start depth is where do I start my cut? I want to do at the top of the material. 0 is always the top of the material, no matter what you said your Z is the top or the bottom. Trust me on this. You told it Z is at the base of the table and that your part is 3/4 of an inch thick. So it will do the math in its head and start the tool at 3/4 of an inch above the table on the surface of the material. I'm going to go down 1/4 inch because that seems like a reasonable amount. Next on the pocket tool path is what tool do we want to use? I'm going to select it and take a look at my library. The library comes with it and you can create your own tools and you can also modify the ones that come with it. I'm going to use the 1/4 inch end mill that came with the software. There's a place you can put in notes if you want to say this is my unscrewed part number XYZ or whatever you want. Obviously it's 1/4 of an inch in diameter. It has 2 flutes because that's the one that I use has. One of the things you can set is how deep you're going to make each pass. I recommend that you start at 1/2 the diameter. So I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch deep on a 1/4 inch tool. Makes the tool happy and is less likely to break things, and it's a good compromise. Next is what's called the step over. This is how much I'm going to overlap each pass when I'm doing the area clearing process. The more overlap you have, the longer it takes. The less overlap you have, the shorter it takes, but the less lovely your output is. So 40% is a nice compromise. Next up, we need to set the feeds and speeds. 12,000 is a reasonable number. You will note that Maker Nexus's Shopbot does not have spindle control. You do manual control. So this is more of a reminder and will also help when you do a timing to get an accurate estimate of how long the job is going to take. Things we do want to set are how fast we go in the X and Y direction, that's the feed rate, and how fast we go in the Z, which is the plunge rate. 120 inches per minute or 2 inches per second is a reasonable rate for a 1/4 inch tool in, say, MDF or light plywood. If I was doing mahogany or teak or oak or something, I would go slower to give the tool a chance to clear the area well without breaking or making a terrible mess. I like to plunge at about half the speed that I'm going in X and Y. This is kind to the tool and makes it last longer. Great. I'm going to select. So I've selected my cutting depth and my tool. Notice that it automatically calculates that there's going to be 2 passes. Doing the math on our head, we agree with that. You have the opportunity to use a larger tool when you're clearing an area. This is an advanced topic we're going to skip at this point. Next up we have is the strategy we use to clear out the pocket. We can either use offset or raster. Offset follows the profile, the outline of the geometry, and starts in the center and works its way to the outside. Raster goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, or up and down, depending on how you select it. I like offset. That's what I'm going to use. If you were really concerned, you could do both of them and compare which one takes less time and choose that. Next section is what's called ramp. We have the opportunity to ramp into the part. So this means that instead of plunging straight down with the tool, I'm going to go at an angle, which again is kind to your tool and make it last longer. Okay, down here we have the opportunity to name what it is. I'm going to call it pocket 1 because I'm not feeling very creative today, but we could call it center pocket or clear or text pocket or whatever we want. When I click to calculate, it goes out and figures out what it's going to do and gives me a graphic representation. Notice we went from the 2D view to the 3D view. Here's my 2D view, and here's the 3D. And what I can do is I can actually use the simulator over here. It brings up the preview toolpaths submenu. And when I click on the play button right here, it's actually going to show me what it's going to do. I'm going to speed it up because I don't have all afternoon to watch the pretty movie. But you can see that it clears the whole area and then goes back a second pass a little deeper. Okay, so this is actually a 3D model, so we can rotate it around and take a look and see what's going to happen. That's great. I'm going to close the preview, click on close, and I'm going to go back to the 2D view because I want to do some more work. I'm going to click on the 2D view. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to drill the 4 holes. No, I'm not. I'm going to do the text. We'll do the holes and the outline later. So for the text, I'm going to select those 2 things I want to do. I'm going to select the engraving toolpath. This time I'm not going to use that square bottomed 1/4 inch tool I had. I'm going to use what's called a engraving bit or a V-bit. They are V-shaped. Okay, so I'm going to select, here's what it actually looks like. The one I use is a 1/2 inch wide, 16,000 RPM, 100. These are reasonable numbers. This is great. I'll hit select. Notice up here, its start depth is defaults the top of the material, which is not going to work because there's nothing on the top of the material. There's a 1/4 inch deep hole where I want to put this text. So I'm going to start down at a 1/4 of an inch and let it decide how deep it wants to go. And really nothing else needs to be selected here. Hit calculate. And when I hit preview, it's going to show me what it's going to do. Super, looking good. Okay, we got two of the 4 paths already done. Going to go back to the view. Next thing I want to do is I want to drill the 4 holes so I can mount my tool. I'm going to hold the shift key down while I select all 4 circles. Circle, circle. There we go. This time I'm going to use a drill tool path, which is the 3rd menu item over here. All that does is basically plunge a drill bit, or in my case, I'm going to use an end mill as a drill bit. So I'm going to use the end mill, what had used in my first, and we'll use in the next step. Same settings, 12,000. Notice it remembered what I set before, 12,000 RPM. Great. Okay. Um, and I had the opportunity of using something called peck drilling. I can basically just bury the drill in one shot, or I can be kind to the tool and go down a little bit at a time. I'm going to go down 1/8 of an inch at a time, so it'll take about 6 passes to get through the part. That'd be great. Going to click calculate, and it's going to show me it's going to run around the edge there, and it's going to drill 4 holes. Awesome. Last but not least, I want to cut this out, so I want to hang it up on my wall. So I'm going to click the outline, and this time I'm going to use what's called a profile. And what the profile does is cut either on a line, inside a line, or outside a line. In this case here, I want to cut on the outside of the line because I want to keep what's inside the line. I can imagine if there'd be an opportunity where I want to make a smaller sign, I could cut on the inside or on the line, but we are going to cut on the outside. Notice it's kept my same tool. I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to go 3/4 of an inch down. I'm using the same end mill. It's going to take 6 passes to go around. That's great. On the outside, we can add tabs. I will add tabs so that it stays stuck in the on the material on the bed. So when I click on the tabs, I need to actually add the tabs. I'm going to click edit. Shay, where would you like to put them? I think I'll put one on this side over here and another one on this side over here. And I'll say okay. Great. Um, Last but not least, I can add a ramp. I can just cut straight down, which will step down and go around, step down, go around. Or if I add the ramp, it'll go in. And one of the choices on ramps is spiral, which basically means move down continuously. This is the fastest and the smoothest and my favorite. If I click calculate, it shows me I'm going to go around 6 times. If I click the preview, it's going to go around and around and around. And we see that there's tabs. So hopefully this will stay stuck, and hopefully I left enough material around the edge that I can screw it down to the table without the tool running into the edges. Great. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is save this file. We're going to do File, Save As, and I'm going to call it Sign. So what that does is that saves the geometry I've done and the tool paths I've created. Because this is a demonstration version or a makerspace version, when I try to save my files, it tells me, I'm sorry, this is a trial version. You'll have to go to the makerspace. So in the next video, I'll be taking this file at MakerNexus, and we will show you how to write the tool paths to actually make this on the ShopBot. Thank you for listening.